Hey guys, how you going? So today on BK Sport, we are here to talk about the NRL season and grade each team. This is going to be completely my opinion. I'm not listening to any articles or whatever anyone else's opinion is. This is my opinion of how each team graded this year. I am going to be doing all 16 NRL teams, all the way from Broncos, who are in last, you know, the last place Broncos. Just wanted to emphasize the Broncos. We're in last, all the way up to the top, which is obviously Penrith. This is going to include everything, whether you made the finals, whether you didn't make the finals, whether you finished on top, you know, whether you won the grand final, where you got knocked out in finals. This is going to include everything. So let's get started and let's review the 2020 NRL season. Alrighty, so funnily enough, we're going to be doing this alphabetically. Alphabetical order. And do you know who comes up first? It is the Brisbane Broncos. They obviously came 16th this year, which is last. I'm pretty certain that we know where we're going to grade this team. They came last, and in reality, I actually tipped them for 8th spot. I predicted them in 8th spot. And when I predicted them for 8th spot, I actually thought it was quite low compared to everyone else. Everyone else was putting them like top 4. You know, they were saying like the Broncos are here and they're, you know, they're ready to go. Obviously, that was not the case. The Broncos did not make the 8. They definitely did not make top 4, and they came last. They came last. So I think this grade is pretty simple. I'm going to give them an F. And if I could honestly give them lower, I would give them lower. But you can't get any lower than an F. It's a massive fail. You know, it's worse than a D. It's the worst thing you can possibly get. Broncos' expectations are making the 8. They went on a whole run for like 20 odd years where they never missed the 8. And then it was only a couple of years back, maybe 6-7 years back now, where they missed the 8 for the first time. So this club is built on expectations. And unfortunately for them, but fortunately for the rest of the comp, they now get to realise what it feels like to be at the bottom of the table, and they get to realise what it feels like to be the joke of the competition. Next up, we have the Canberra Raiders. Now this is a very interesting one. I just looked at the ladder and I thought, okay, well they came 5th, and you know, they weren't terrible. You know, a lot of people were thinking that they could actually win the grand final this year, and I guess they did enough to say that they were a decent team. But then when it came to finals, I just don't think the Canberra Raiders really turned up. I think their grand final was getting revenge over the Roosters, and they obviously got flogged by the Storm. So for me, I think they did enough to prove that they were decent this year, but I think they had higher expectations, and I feel like the way that they finished off the season with an absolutely pathetic performance in the preliminary final against the Storm, it really does bring it down. I think I'm going to have to give him a B, because a B does what it needs to do. You passed. You did pretty well in the meantime, but you weren't anything extraordinary. Usually you'd find that a team in the prelim should probably deserve somewhat of an A-, even a B+, I guess, or an A, but I think that the Canberra Raiders came into this season with a lot higher expectations too. Their goal this year was to win the grand final, and I know everyone else says that everyone's team is there to win the grand final, but in reality it's just not the case. You know, the other teams have ambitions of not finishing last, other teams have ambitions of making the top 8, and Raiders, they obviously were in the grand final last year, lost, so their ambitions were to win the grand final, and in reality they got absolutely smacked in the prelim, and I just don't really think that they deserve anything above a B for mine. Next up, we have the Canterbury Bulldogs. This team came 15th. That's second last, and also they actually finished on the same amount of points as last. They only won 3 games this year. The only reason they didn't finish last was because of their points differential. I think with Bulldogs fans, they thought they were going to have a better season than I guess everyone else thought. I never really rated this team. I think I had them in the bottom 4 as well. I think I had them like 3rd last, so really they still managed to find a way to go under the expectations that I had for them, even though my expectations for them were quite low. Bulldogs fans, because of the way that this season ended last year, they gave them some high expectations and they just didn't perform. They came second last, equal last, and I'm going to have to give them a D. I don't think it's an F. I think there were signs this year that showed that they were somewhat okay at times, but in reality they don't have the points in them. They're an absolutely shocking attacking team, and you can't give him a pass. You just can't. They came second last. I'm going to have to give him a D. Alrighty, we're up to the Cronulla Sharks. Now, they made the 8. They did come 8th though. In a full season, would they have come 8th? Probably not. There was a couple teams that were really fighting for it in the end between the Titans and the Warriors. But in the same sense, there still was only 20 games. They still made the 8, so you can't think of it in a regular season. All year long, everyone was like, they've got one of the best attacks in the league, but their defense is one of the worst in the league. And I guess 8th position shows that exactly. They're a team that I've always known to find new ways to lose a game when they've already won a game, and this year it was kind of like that as well. I don't know, because the Sharks, they're a decent-ish team, but they're not that great, and they did make the 8, which I guess is a positive, but they got smacked up in the first round. Nothing really too special. They still made the 8, so there's at least a positive. I'm going to give them a C. I think they passed. They made the 8. That's definitely a pass. There's no way you could put them in a B category. There's no plus really there. So I think it's just on par. And I think that's acceptable. And although just because you made the 8 doesn't mean it's a pass season, I guess for me, I think the Sharks still did okay. Here we are, my favourite place, the Gold Coast Titans, my boys. As you guys know, Titans fans, we have a pretty rough trot. You know, over the years, it's been really difficult to support this team, and if you see people who have actually supported the team through thick and thin, you have to congratulate them. This team has never been an easy team to support, and I guess it kind of might factor into the grading of this year. However, you do actually need to look at the fact that this team was predicted last. Again, this team was predicted to get the wooden spoon. And I think halfway through the season that we were around the wooden spoon. We were wooden spooners. However, we finished off the season with 5 wins in a row, provided they were against lower teams in the bottom 8, alongside the Knights, who obviously were one of the lower teams in the top 8. And with my expectations, I had them as 11th, and I thought I was quite high. So to actually finish in 9th, I think is a massive positive for the team, a massive positive for the club, because you've got to realise this is a team with a brand new coach. You know, AJ Brimson, arguably if not one of, the best players in the team, was out for 3/4 of the year. Although not making the 8 is, for some teams, a very big negative, and for some teams it's like, you're not making the 8, okay, you deserve to get a D or an F. But I think with other teams that have the expectations of coming last and only just missing out on the top 8 by literally 1 win in a shortened season when they were absolutely firing and had 5 wins in a row to finish off the year, I think it's a massive, massive, massive positive for this team. So I'm actually going to give them a B. And that's a good mark from me. You know, I could easily come out here and say that they got an A+ because they completely exceeded expectations, but I think that they still came 9th. They did still miss the 8, and the ultimate dream, the ultimate goal is to technically win and to make the 8, so I think it's fair to give them a B. I don't think it's a C where it's just like they got by. I don't think it's a B+ or anything like that, because I still think, yeah, they missed the 8, but I think B is a good season. I think B is an improved season, and I'm very happy to see how this club is going forward. The Manly Sea Eagles, eh? Oh, well, I don't know about that. 13th place? I tipped them to win the comp. Yep, if you go back and look at my NRL previews, I tipped Manly to win the comp. And in reality, you can't really look at this team and say it was all injuries, because there are other teams that had much worse injuries that actually, arguably, well, won the comp, and another couple of them were still in the top 8. So for Manly, they just completely failed. They just completely and utterly failed. And I tipped them, and I'm an idiot. Well, look, I think this team, on its own merits, when they got a full team together, they're a really, really damn well good team. But it just didn't happen this year. It just did not happen this year. They completely failed, and I'm going to give them an absolute I'm going to give an F. I'm going to give an F. I'm going to give them the lowest mark you can possibly give. This is a team that was meant to make the top 8. This was a team that, you know, had top 4 aspirations and winning the comp aspirations. And it turned into them not making the 8 and finishing very close to the bottom 4. You know, 16, 15, 4. They finished in the bottom 4. So, I'm sorry, but it just has to be an absolutely failed season. And Manly fans, buddy, gee whiz, you're in a rough trot. You might be able to get better next year, but this isn't a next year preview, buddy. You relax. Whew, the Manly fans, yeah, they wouldn't be too happy. They're another team like the Broncos who have very high expectations every single year, and well, this isn't our expectations anymore. The champions, the Melbourne Storm, they had to relocate to the Sunshine Coast all year, and they won the competition against all odds. They were fantastic. They were so consistent all year, and their team is just ridiculously OP. It's overpowered, and there's nothing else besides an A+ that you could give here. They did it against all odds. They didn't get to sleep in their own beds for like 3 months or whatever it was. They had to relocate to a whole different city and still ended up winning the comp. No one can take this competition away from them because they're the team that was impacted the most alongside the Warriors, and they were still able to come out as number 1. So A+ for the Melbourne Storm. If you argue that, you're an idiot. That was just a fantastic season by such a clinical team. Ooh, all right. And Newcastle Knights. This is a hard one. This is a difficult one because they really finished off on a low. They really finished off not really doing anything. They finished off losing, 36-0 to the Titans. So, jeez. I don't even know what to say here. Like, they still made the 8. They came 7th. But I think a lot of them actually thought that they would be in a better place by now. I think that a lot of the Knights organisation, whether it be fans or players or coaching staff or just anyone in regards to the Knights, thought the Knights would be a little bit better than they are right now. Everyone's been saying for years that this team is going to be something. This team is actually going to make it, and they haven't really made it, and I don't know about them going into the future. This season didn't prove anything for me. I think it made me think less of how this team is going forward than more of this team going forward. They just don't seem to have it at the moment, so I'm going to still give them a C because it's like the Sharks. They still made the 8. They actually finished above the Sharks, so I guess, I don't know. It's a difficult team because you don't want to say failure, but then again, they did get absolutely walloped, even though they went up 12-0 against the Rabbits in the first week of final. Jeez, it's a difficult one. You nearly want to give them a foul, but you're not going. I'm going to give them a C. I think they passed. I think they did enough to have a relatively okay season, but the way they finished off their year really puts a sour note on that year. And yeah, I think a C, even a C- is plausible, but I'll go C. We were just talking about a team that was severely impacted by the current climate of how sport is run nowadays, where, you know, the teams have to relocate to be able to compete in the competition. The Melbourne Storm was one of them who had to go up to Queensland, and the New Zealand Warriors from another country had to relocate to Sydney. Well, they had to relocate to, I can't remember where, the Central Coast. So that's a whole different country relocation. They can't be anywhere near majority of their families, I believe. They had players coming and going throughout the year. They were in a whole fresh new environment, and they still did pretty well. You know, they were fighting for the 8 at the end of the year. They came 10th place, 4 points out of the 8, but I just think this is a very successful season considering that they were predicted for last after the whole, you know, well, I actually had them for last originally. I had them before the season started as last. I think that really everything that happened motivated them and gave them extra incentive. I don't think the Warriors are that great of a team, but I do think the Warriors had a successful enough season to give them a B+. I'm not going to give them an A. I know you want me to give them an A. I'm not going to give them an A. They came 10. I don't think they deserve anything lower than a B+ just because of the circumstances. If I'm going to rate them on 10th, I would give them I'd give them a B- to C+ just because everyone expected them to be around that bottom 2, bottom 3 area regardless. But I think B+ shows that I have respect for the fact that they did everything in their power to keep this competition alive. I know that the competition would have still gone on either way. Like, people are talking as if it would have not gone ahead, and in reality they would have found a way. It just would have meant that there was a team lacking, and that would have sucked. But I do think it goes ahead, but that's not the point here. The Warriors, they played fantastic this year to get to where they did, and although they didn't make the 8, I think B+ is quality based on the circumstances around their season. And I think Warriors fans should, although they wouldn't be happy that they're still not where they want to be, they should be happy of where they came this year based on everything surrounding them. In 14th place, we had the North Queensland Cowboys. I originally had this team for 7th place in the top 8, and they put up nothing. They did nothing this year, and for me, they're a really bland team. I don't know what it is. I thought the Valentine Holmes coming back would have been quality, but I guess it's going to take time, and I guess he's in the process of readjusting, but he did fine. You know, I'm not going to say the Cowboys are all Valentine Holmes, and I just think that the whole team just doesn't seem to connect with each other. I don't know what it is with the Cowboys going forward, but this year really was a disappointment, and I think I have to give them an F. They came 14th, and that's not where they should be. They should have been at least fighting for the top 8. There wasn't really many moments throughout the season that I thought were, positives for them. I guess because they didn't come last is definitely a positive for them, and they didn't finish bottom 2, but they still finished bottom 4. I guess a lot of people could argue that a D is worth it, but for me, I think that they did worse than a D because their expectations were a lot higher than this. 14th place isn't great as it is, and the team outlook for me from this year was not great. So I'm giving it a massive F, but not as bad as a Broncos F. 3rd place, Parramatta Eels. This is difficult too because I feel like they really overachieved compared to what they actually put on show. They still came top 4 though. They still came top 3. You've really got to respect that. Top 3. I think it really showed how weak the competition was this year. But in the same sense, the Parramatta Eels still did their job to get top 4. They still got to a point the second week of final. Well, they went out in straight sets is another problem. I think a lot of Eels fans thought they had it in them this year to win the comp, and I just don't think this team really does. When it came down to the crunch, they got knocked out in straight sets. A top 4 team really shouldn't be getting knocked out in straight sets. I know it does happen somewhat frequently, but I don't think it should be happening. And there was nothing really too special about Parramatta. I guess at the beginning of the year, they looked a lot better than they did towards the end of the year. So recency bias might come into play a little bit here. I don't think you can give them any less than a B+. I reckon a B+ is the minimum you could give here, simply because they still made top 3. But overall in the season, they got knocked out straight. I think that they should get a B, to be honest with you. I'm going to give them a B. I think that their fans expected a lot more of them. I think the people expected a lot more of them. They came 3rd, but they got embarrassed in finals, in reality. So I'll give them a B. I don't think that they had an A kind of season. I don't think it was a season that really gave a lot of trust and a lot of value to the competition. And I think that it just kind of showed how somewhat weak this competition is that they came 3rd. Hopefully for the fans, they can really turn it around going forward, and they can, find a way to make this team successful and provide a lot more than they did this year. The minor premiers, the Penrith Panthers, they came first. They went on a 17-game win streak. It was actually ridiculous. They were unbelievable this year, but they did fall down at the final hurdle. They did fall apart in the grand final, and they were down 26-0 and 22-0 at half-time, 26-0 I think in 50 minutes, and then they only lost the game 26-20. But the whole game didn't reflect that scoreline. They were absolutely trounced by the Storm. But I don't want to sit here and give a negative on the Panthers. I think that this year was an unbelievable success. In my preseason prediction, I think I tipped them for like 10th or 12th, something along those lines. And I think that was because, firstly, Jerome Luai absolutely massively blew onto the market this year, so I didn't really get to see too much of Jerome Luai in as quality as he's been. Api Koroisau absolutely was fantastic for the Panthers, and most of my argument for them not making the 8 was based on Cleary. If he got injured, they would really struggle to find somebody to pull them over the line. But I think even if Cleary had got injured for a significant amount of time, Jerome Luai and the team really would have come together. This team really did make leaps and bounds in regards to improving, and they're a very young team. So the fact that they came first, the fact that they did make the grand final, and the fact that they technically only lost the grand final by 6 points and did have a chance to tie it up on the last play of the game, alongside the fact the majority of the expectation was that they would probably miss the 8 or just make the 8, I'm going to give them an A+. I think that a majority of people would not exactly be too happy with a plus. I think that an A is the minimum you can give here, but I think that 17 games in a row win streak is ridiculous, and to make the grand final when you weren't even nearly expected to make the 8, you can't go past it. You just can't go past it. They had a fantastic season for such a fresh, young side, and this team is showing a lot of positives going into the future. So, besides the fact they didn't win the grand final, I think that everything else is basically perfect. In 6th place, we had the South Sydney Rabbitohs, and I think that 6th really, truly represented where this team deserved to be. It was a very up and down year. They had points in them. They had the ability to concede points. They were like an improved version of the Sharks, and this team, I thought they were going to be a top 4 team pre-season. I thought that they're a quality team going forward, and I knew that they had what they showed at the end of the season in them. and I just wish they had it shown a lot earlier. Latrell going down was obviously a massive loss, but they really were able to still pick it up from there, and they really fired home. So I'm going to give the Rabbitohs a B+. I think that they did quality. I think that towards the later end of the season, they really showed that this team has it in them to be there when it comes to finals, and they made the preliminary. I guarantee you that halfway through this year, not many people would have been saying, I don't even know if the Rabbitohs were in the 8 after like 8 rounds or something like that. They snuck in and then just stayed there. And towards the end of the season, when they absolutely smacked up the Roosters by like 50, 60 points, people started to really take this team as a threat. And in the finals, they started to think that this team could actually go and win it all. They did ultimately lose to the Panthers, but only by like 4 or 6 points. A B+ is good. It wasn't an extraordinary season. It wasn't an under-impressive season. I think B+ is quite a solid season, and it leaves room for more. 12th spot, the Dragons. The St. George Illawarra Dragons, for me, really, it was a bit of a nothing season. I think that a lot of people had a lot higher expectations for them. Not in the sense that they were going to make the 8, but to at least challenge for the 8. And they were well, actually, they started off really badly. Really poorly. And they had a coach sacking. Paul McGregor obviously gone. Their season was very mixed and very all over the place. Unfortunately, it just never really picked up. I think a lot of people actually started to believe in the Dragons, and they fell apart again. They lost to the Titans at a stage where they needed to win. I don't actually, I think it's, I don't know. It was a bit of a nothing year for me, and I don't think they really passed. I'm going to have to give them a D. I'm going to give them a D. I don't think it's an F like the Cowboys or the Broncos, where they didn't show anything. I guess the Dragons at the beginning were worse than an F, and then picked themselves up to possibly like a C+, and then towards the end of the season went back down to a D. Second last on the agenda, we have the Sydney Roosters, the back-to-back champions. They were the team that everyone was saying was going to win back-to-back-to-back. And for the majority of the season, they had a severe amount of injuries, like a ridiculous amount of injuries. And people still kept saying this team's going to be right by finals. Guess who one of those people were? Me. I thought they would be good come finals. But they just didn't really recover. But they still kept giving people belief that they were going to be there when it came to the end of the season, and that you couldn't write them off, and in reality you couldn't write them off. But then when they got to that final game of the season against the Rabbitohs, their biggest rivals, and lost by 50-60 points, the doubt really came into the mind. The doubt really showed that this team probably doesn't have what it takes to go back-to-back-to-back. I still thought they had it in them, but then they lost in straight sets. They got knocked out by the Panthers, and then the week after they got knocked down by the Raiders, who ended up being pretty shithouse in the end too. So I don't really know, because I think a lot of Roosters fans, they try and talk it up as if it wasn't a bad season, and it wasn't a bad season, but I think that they were definitely expecting to win back-to-back-to-back. I think that with their team towards the end of the year, they were still expecting to win back-to-back-to-back. They were really rampaged by injuries, which is why it could go to B+, but I'm gonna say B, because this team, even coming fourth, is low expectations for them. They really expected to be up there, minimum top 2. I think this is a pass for the Roosters. If you're talking about any other team besides the back-to-back champions, like for example a team in the bottom 8 or a team in the lower end of the top 8, this coming fourth and even getting knocked out in straight sets probably gives that team like an A or an A+ even. But yeah, look, I think that the Roosters, I'll give them a B. It was a decent enough season. They fought against all odds with injuries. They just didn't have it in the end. The West Tigers, the final team that we get to talk about, one of the most interesting teams in the competition. I actually tipped this team for, I think, 15th place. They did impress. They impressed to a point where they nearly finished in the position that they finish in every year, which is 9th, but my team ended up taking that from them. So in that regards, and I know this is always memed, they could think of it as a positive season. They didn't come 9th, but they didn't finish on the positive end of not coming 9th. They finished on the negative end of not coming 9th, and they finished actually below, not only just below 9th, but a below spot of 9. All the way through the year, people keep saying, but Tigers, they're a sneaky team, Blaze. They're a sneaky damn well team, you know? Why do you watch this team get into the top 8? And the whole time I'm there saying, like, well, no, this team has, this team's not going to make the top 8, you know? They don't really, there's not much specialty there. I guess that Nofaluma had a good year, and Harry Grant, who's not actually a Tiger, had a good year. But in regards to this year, we have to review this year. even with a couple of good positives, they still weren't able to pull it across the line and fell apart towards the back end of the year. I guess there was a lot of close games that they could have won, but a lot of teams could argue that point. There were a lot of close games that could have been won. Do I think it's a pass because I predicted them for 15th and they end up coming in 11th? Or do I go with the general consensus of people tip them around this area, so it's kind of like, I guess that always leads to a pass. I guess this kind of leads to, I want to give them a C-. I'll give them a C-. I don't think they had a failure of a year. I don't think it was a ridiculous kind of, let's get the pitchforks and let's go burn down Balmain or Campbelltown. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that people would be that angry with how this season went, but I also don't think people would be impressed with it. I think it's enough for a pass, but it's not a positive pass in a C or C+, and it's not a fail of a year. So I'll go with C-, but I do want to provide warning for Tigers fans that you might not like the preview for next year, because unless Harry Grant stays, it's not looking great. Anyway, guys, that's going to do us for today's video. If you have not subscribed yet, go and damn well hit that subscribe button. I know it is the off season, but we do still have our live streams for the Origin coming up, and we are still going to be providing NRL content and all different sporting content, so definitely subscribe with your notification bell on, and don't forget to hit that thumbs up button so I know that you are enjoying these style of videos. But like I said, that will do me for today, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Catch you later.